deja vu, a feeling that one has seen or heard something before, something overly or unpleasantly familiar. The strange feeling that in some way you've already experienced what is happening now. And an example is given. He even moves like his father, only dispelling the eerie feeling of deja vu when he opens his mouth. A bit like Bill Gates. And then there's coincidence. The occurrence of events that happen at the same time, apparently by accident, but seem to have some connection. And finally, the phrase "in your face" to describe something that is quite obvious. I have one word for you: monkeypox. Deja vu. October 2019, Event 201, funded and run by the Bill Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, and so on. A simulation of a coronavirus pandemic. Within weeks, the world was told we had a coronavirus pandemic and all that followed. Okay, March 2021. The Gates Foundation and World Economic Forum were connected to a simulation of a monkeypox pandemic. And it was run by the Nuclear Threat Institute and the Munich Security Conference. And a week to the week, a year later, Europe had its first alleged case of monkeypox. Events are not random. It's clearer and clearer to more and more people now. They are carefully planned and calculated, and as I'll come to, these people are not as bright as some would have us believe, to the point where once you get a feel for how it all works, they are so transparent in their nonsense that they are trying to get us to believe. So let's look at this simulation for a monkeypox pandemic a year ago. A report was produced as a result, and the key findings included the need for a more robust, transparent detection, evaluation, and early warning system that can rapidly communicate actionable information about pandemic risks. And this was preempting what is being discussed now in Geneva, the World Health Organization treaty to centralize the control of health response, pandemic response, health emergency response across the world. And another finding in this report on the monkeypox simulation: gaps in national level preparedness, which will require national governments to improve preparedness by developing national level pandemic response plans, built upon a coherent system of triggers that prompt anticipatory action despite uncertainty and near-term costs, described as a no-regrets policy-making basis. No regrets, like spending an absolute fortune, trillions and trillions of taxpayer money, borrowed money, to respond to the COVID line. So these triggers are meant to be things that happen, not least as a result of the World Health Organization. Like, it declares a pandemic, and that triggers certain actions. And all this is connected because the people, or many of the people involved in Event 201, preempted COVID, were involved in this. So this report sounds rather familiar, the monkeypox report. Although triggered actions would vary depending upon the particular needs of the country, in most cases the goals are the same. Slow the spread of disease and buy time, wait for it, and flatten the epidemiological curve while using that time to scale up public health and medical systems to keep up with growing caseloads and save lives. A repeat of COVID is what they're talking about. And it says non-pharmaceutical interventions such as mask mandates pushes back in amazement, and ceasing mass gatherings, ditto, were deemed to be critical for blocking chains of disease transmission. Travel health screening measures, vaccine passports, were viewed as valuable, and undertaking little to no non-pharmaceutical interventions, that's lockdowns, masks, and all this stuff. The people that did that in this simulation, that didn't do that non-pharmaceutical intervention and downplayed the virus and its potential impacts, they experienced much worse outcomes in terms of illness and mortality. But those actually fictional countries in the simulation that promptly adopted aggressive measures to slow virus transmission, such as shutting down mass gatherings, imposing social distancing measures, and implementing mask mandates, in addition to establishing large-scale testing and contact tracing operations, they fared far better in the simulation, which of course was fixed to make that happen. So here we have in 2021 a repeat of COVID, which is now being played out in 2022. And their recommended response to the monkeypox outbreak just happens to mirror the response that will never show to exist, by the way, still to this day, in the scientific paper, COVID. And so, who are these characters involved? Again, sits back in amazement. The global head of Johnson & Johnson Global Public Health, R&D, and Janssen Research and Development. Dr. Chris Elias, President of the Global Development Division of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Director of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the Chinese CDC, massively influences the World Health Organization, and thus the way it deals with pandemics is then recommended by the World Health Organization. Then there's this lady, Margaret Hamburg, Interim President for Global Biological Policy and Programs at the Nuclear Threat Institute, or Initiative rather, and a member of the Global Health Scientific Advisory Committee for the Gates Foundation, and a member of the board of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, which was created and funded into existence by the Gates Foundation. Then there's Dr. Michael Ryan, Executive Director of the World Health Organization Health Emergencies Program, highly visible figure, of course, during the COVID, quote, pandemic. And the head of corporate affairs for Merck was also involved. And both the Nuclear Threat Initiative and the Munich Security Conference received funding from the Gates Foundation. And the report itself, recommending all this, was funded by the Open Philanthropy Project. One of the main funders of that is Dustin Moskovitz, co-founder of Facebook, along with Mark Zuckerberg, and the World Health Organization, obviously at the center of it, and so is the World Economic Forum that has joined forces with the initiative, the Nuclear Threat Initiative. They're all, in other words, singing from the same song sheet. And with monkeypox, we have the same scam. It's the PCR test. So this is actually the foundation of the entire hoax and subsequent hoaxes that we are seeing and will see. You get a test that's not testing for what you claim is a virus, but you persuade the public that if they test positive with a PCR test, which the inventor Kerry Mullis said cannot tell you if you're sick, the public think they've got whatever you tell them they've got because they've tested positive with a test not testing for what you say they've got. And so, what's the World Health Organization saying in terms of recommending how you diagnose this monkeypox? You use the PCR test. They are nothing if not predictable. And there's tens of millions of chickens and turkeys that are being destroyed because they are said to have bird flu. And how are they testing to see if they've got bird flu? They're using a PCR test. So anyone that's paying attention will have seen by now that this is nothing, of course, to do with health. And something else that needs to be remembered is the Rockefeller connection to all this. There was a guy called Thomas Milton Rivers, who was director of the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, now called the Rockefeller University, between 1937 and 1956. And Thomas Milton Rivers is known as the father of modern biology. Have you noticed that everything these days is a bloody virus? People go to doctors, and if the doctors can't work out what's wrong with them, they say, oh, I think you've got a virus. Everything's a virus. Bird flu virus, COVID virus, monkeypox virus. So, through the Rockefeller operation, this whole virus thing was developed. And then what happened? The Rockefellers were the same family and their network that created the big pharma cartel, not least through John D. Rockefeller, the oil tycoon. So this virus scam has been created, and then the Rockefeller created Big Pharma, then produces the vaccines, fake vaccines, to respond to the virus crisis that the Rockefellers, operating through both sides, the creation and the treatment, have made possible. Who created the World Health Organization, which now dominates health policy in the world and says how viruses must be responded to, and pandemics must be responded to based on viruses? The Rockefellers, in 1948, as part of the UN, as part of the world government's stalking horse. Who runs the World Health Organization today. Ah,